But I've been watering my lawn. I've been getting an inch of water a week. Why am I still seeing these brown spots? I'm sure there's a lot of us saying that. We're going to talk about that today here on Budget Lawns. Welcome back, my friends, to another edition of Budget Lawns. Thank you for joining me. If you're subscribed to the channel, I appreciate it. If not, consider doing so. Hit that notification bell and that thumbs up button. Leave me a comment down below. All that stuff helps the channel out a ton. Oh my gosh, it's hot again. We talked about this a couple weeks ago here on the channel. Some summer lawn care tips and how to deal with the hot, dry stretches. I'll leave that video linked down below. I'll also leave a link down below for a video I did about watering my lawn with just sprinklers and hoses the old-fashioned way. If you're in that same boat, we're going to kind of piggyback on both of those today because it is a scorcher. I know a lot of us are dealing with this heat. Right now, what does that say? 90. Ooh, that was a band back in the day. 98 degrees. So it's hot in the garage. It's even hotter in the sun. How is the lawn holding up? I think National Weather Service has it somewhere in the 90s here. I just know it doesn't really matter what it is. The heat index is around 100. It is just super duper hot. And the lawn is not getting the benefit of much rain. We did have a little bit of rainfall the other day, probably about 4/10 of an inch, so enough, but not as much as I would like. Overall, though, the lawn is looking really good, but don't let it fool you. You see a lot of green in there. The color's looking great. The spring dead spots are filling in very nicely now. Overall, it looks good, but I, like a lot of you, have my spots that are, shall we say, struggling. And there aren't many of them, but I want to talk about why you might be seeing some spots in your lawn that just aren't doing as good as the others. And you're sitting there going, but I'm getting enough water. I know I'm watering, I'm running my sprinklers, I'm getting the inch in my tuna can every week. But there's some other things you need to consider as to why those areas, I like to call them hot spots, might not be thriving like the other areas. And we're going to use this little thing. You ever seen one of these little infrared thermometers? Because I would be willing to bet in those hot spots that you've got, it's even hotter than the air temperature around them, because there are other factors at play that might make those spots struggle, like sidewalks, driveways, bricks along the side of your house. We're going to take a look at a few of those spots around my yard, and we'll also consider those areas that, if you look in the middle of the lawn, everything's nice and green, because that's where I know the sprinkler really gets the best coverage and quantity of water that I want. But we've got those spots that are the outlier areas that aren't getting equal amounts of water as the main sections. So let's mosey around my lawn and take a look at a few areas that I want to point out that I'm struggling with right now, because I would imagine I'm not the only one. Let's take this spot, for example. This is kind of one of my outlier regions. I got my sprinkler set up when I water right there in the middle of the yard, and this is one of the furthest spots away. So it gets wet, but by no means is it getting the inch of water a week that it needs. It also sees a little bit of shade from this tree. So that little area right there, not looking as good as some other spots. You can see in through here as well, that's getting kind of thin compared to right there where it gets more water. This is thinning out just a little bit, needs a little extra TLC when it comes to the irrigation. So what you can do with those spots that just don't get the right coverage with your sprinkler, just hand water them. You know, it doesn't take long if you're standing there with the right nozzle or spray or whatever you like to use, but stretch that hose out and just hit those with a little extra water. I've not been doing that yet, but if we don't see some rain soon, I am going to be doing that because I've got some areas that are really starting to show signs of not necessarily heat stress with Bermuda, but drought stress for sure. Like this spot right here. Let's look at this one because it's starting to thin out, and it's also one of those areas that's, you know, furthest away from the sprinkler. But look at that. It's starting to kind of brown up a little bit, show some signs that it's not getting enough H2O like all the areas around it. But what I really want to look at right here is, let's take this guy and let's put the thermometer on this concrete right here, because you can see the curb, the street. This spot's surrounded by concrete on just about half of it. So let's look at what the temperature is right here next to it from the hard surface. Yeah, probably not the best day to wear a black shirt outside. I'm glad I got the lawn work done yesterday though. I just don't understand why I do this to myself. I guess I'm a glutton for pain. So we know it's hot and we got that established. Let's see how hot it is right here around this little spot that's not doing so great. Wow. Look at that. You see that? 125. Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good indication of why that might be a little bit dry right there. It would certainly suffer from some drought stress more than other locations first. So consider where it's at in location to the sprinkler, where it's at in location to concrete. And when you're talking about concrete, also think too, you know, maybe you have a lot of weeds lining your sidewalks or the street or your driveway, especially early in the spring. Those are the areas that heat up first. So those warmer weather weeds are going to start germinating in those areas first, because the temperature in the soil there rises faster than in other areas. So we know it's hot here, 125, air temperature somewhere in the low 90s. Let's mosey around some other spots in the lawn and see what we're working with there. Pew, 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 pew. I feel like I'm in like a video game with this thing. Let's head to the backyard. We've been doing a lot in the backyard this season so far here on Budget Lawns, because we were kind of hiding the front yard until Sand Week was released, and that got released last week. So if you want to get all the details on how to level your lawn with sand, I will leave a link to a playlist below that you will want to check out. But the backyard, no changes back here. Still looking fantastic, especially considering what it looked like last year. So let's consider some of my hot spots back here. And as I mentioned a while ago, around bricks. See that? Looking pretty thin in through there. This also one of my kind of outlier areas from my sprinkler. Furthest away from it, so it doesn't get quite enough water. But these bricks have been getting direct sun all day, and they are hot. What's that say, 115, 114? So, certainly going to be hotter there than it is out here. I mean, it's still hot out here, but is it right up there next to a good, you know, bricks are good insulators for homes, but still a pretty good conductor of heat, and supplying more heat to that grass there next to the house than, say, I don't know, right here. I mean, look at this. This is beautiful. That looks great. A lot of this looks great. Super proud of what I've accomplished in this backyard this year. As you should be proud of anything you accomplish in your lawn. It doesn't have to, you know, be up to speed with some of the best lawns out there. It just has to be up to speed with what you want out of it. So these bricks here, another area along this side of the house that gets kind of hotter and thin, especially late in the afternoon. This is a west-facing wall, so that sun in the sky is starting to move on over there. And by later on, around 4 or 5 o'clock this afternoon into the early evening, it will be a sauna over here. So those are kind of the areas that I watch in my lawn to see if they need any extra attention. Now there are a few more, but we're not going to go through them all. You get the picture. Just be keeping an eye out for those spots that might be a little hotter than others, might not get as much water as others, and make sure you're giving them just a touch more of your attention. All right, my friends, I've had all the heat I can stand out here today. I'm going back in the AC. We will see you. Man, I've said this before. You try to wrap these things up nice and clean and sharp and be on your A game, and it just doesn't work sometimes. We'll see you next time.